So right now we're just looting up the tools, and we're going to jump straight into Hammer. Like, with bare bones, there's this template map. Actually, there's a template map in general. We can just start completely fresh. There's no reason not to. So there, I went up to File and hit New. Gives you a completely new map. Here it is. This is the default layout. I actually don't usually like to use this as much. I like to combine these two into one. And then when I'm really working on stuff, if you hit Shift-Z, it'll turn into this, where you can just see only the screen. You can do that you can select either of these windows and hit Shift-Z. So like this is the 2D one, or I can do the 3D one. If I'm exploring assets, I drag this out, and you can scale them down, search for things you want to find, stone, whatever. But this is all just UI stuff. Most of it's set fine by default. If you want, you can go up into tools, options, and then like if you 3D, there's stuff like the forward speed. We can boost this. The speed backplane is how far it's going to draw stuff out, and generally doesn't matter. Anyway, alright, so we've completed blank map. This is basically useless. Hit Shift-Z just to give me a little more room. What we're going to do is start with a tile map. Tile maps are great. Don't let people tell you they're not. They're very easy. I just hit Shift-C. That's for going to the tile editor, which is over here. So if I hit that, hit yes, it's going to create me a very, very basic tile map, in that it is literally just a field of green and nothing else. Tile maps are always this size to start with. This is 16K by 16K, and it's centered around the 000 origin point in the world. One thing we actually need to do is make sure we're oriented correctly, so what I'm just going to do is paint something here, because I need to figure out how to orient myself. It's probably a better way to do this. I just usually have done it before this all starts. Alright, this is pretty dumb. Alright, so this is the top edge. This is the bottom edge. Alright, so this is the correct orientation. There's gotta be a better way to do that. I usually don't have to orient myself. Anyway, so you can pretty much ignore that. That was just me trying to figure this crap out and sort of failing. And now I'm just sort of painting things back into place so that we can start fresh. Okay, now we're oriented the correct way. It does matter. The usual top-down camera is going to be kind of at this angle, starting from the bottom. So if you don't start here, you're going to have to rotate your stuff later, and that's not good. It's actually really hard. So you generally want to do better about this. All right, anyway, in tile editor mode, we have actually here, first off, tile sets. Default ones are the Radiant Basic and Dire Basic. Each tile set defines kind of the whole terrain, trees, props, rivers. All of that stuff gets defined in here, and transitions potentially as well. And these are the ones that come by default. It's possible to create your own. I don't know anyone who has yet, but it definitely can be done. Let's just add the desert tile set and the snow tile set, the radiant snow. There's a dire version of each of these. You can only have up to 4 tile sets at once, but you can remove them, and in fact you can change them later at any time. So right now I'm drawing a Radiant Basic. If I say screw that, I want Dire Desert Basic, and change it, voila, the whole map changes. I don't have to do anything, so you can just kind of, switch things up that way. Where am I? Radiant Basic. Alright. So what you can do is obviously you paint with the mouse in order to make stuff happen. And the tools under the tile editor are, 9 of these. They're all pretty useful. This first one, one thing about Hammer is it's really good to get the key bindings down. So I'm going to mention the key binds for everything, at least as far as I know it, because if you have to go over here and click everything to change your tool, and if you have to come over here and change the radius manually and stuff like that, you can't even see it. You have to go over here and stuff. It's really good to learn the key binds. It'll help you move along a lot faster. So the terrain here, this terrain tool, the default when you left click is to paint terrain one level higher, and levels are 128 height. And the significance of that is that that means that fog of war happens. You know, if you're down here, you can't see up here. If you're up here, you can see down here. So that's why it paints in that fashion, at exactly those heights, because it works for Dota. Obviously, you don't necessarily have to work on that, but a tile grid does work on that. There's no way to scale down the tile grid or anything like that. So that's left click, paint there, and you can hold it, and it'll always paint at the same height. If you do shift left click, it will start at the height you click on and paint to that. So I just did shift left click, and now I'm painting here. If I do shift left click on the bottom, I can kind of cut through it like that. But if I do left click here, then it makes it one higher. And here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and so on. You can actually make tile maps quite high. This is the limit. But realistically, like, that's the camera's going to be all kinds of fucked up if you do that for anything but, you know, impassable terrain. And so shift click on the low ground, paint it over, and it's gone. One thing I can do is if you hold middle mouse and drag left or right on your mouse, you can change the radius of the tool. So it maxes out 1,000, and that lets you paint a pretty big area. But if I want to do more detailed stuff, I can pull it down and just, you know, make like a small cut here and just sort of paint the tiles. You can also see, oops, I changed it. You can also see here that there are these gray squares. Those indicate the tile points, the vertices that you can paint tile stuff with. So you can get real deep in there and, you know, paint like here. Oh, I did shift click like there to hit those 4, and here to hit these 4. There's no like ruler or anything like that. Like if I wanted to keep these in line, I have to follow the, you know, the grays, and then I can make sure that they're in line with the world grid that way. You can also hit Control Q. This will give you it's up here somewhere. Yep, tile grid navigation. This will show you what's blocked on the grid nav in game, so where people can path through. Red squares mean not pathable, green squares mean pathable, and we'll just show this real quick. Purple squares mean blocked but by trees, and so they can potentially be unblocked by cutting the trees or breaking them in some other fashion. So I hit Q. Q is again the terrain to go back here. T is the tree tool. E is the water. R is the river tool. U over here is Y is paint plants. I is props. For some reason they jumped that way. I is fucking hell. Jesus. U is paint props. I is select. O goes back to paint blends, and then enable disable is H for some reason. Realistically, get Q, E, R, T. Those are the kind of main ones for painting stuff. And you will paint blends a lot later, but you want to get the basics down for your map. So, alright. One other thing. We're back on the terrain tile with Q. You can also, like, if you have a bunch of trees, you can untick this here, and now you don't see them, so you can, you know, do terrain work here, then turn them back on. Your trees have, you know, gone down a bit. Same for plants and props. Props are things like neutral camps, flags, lanterns, torches, that sort of thing. Okay, so what else can we do with the tile tool? If you scroll down here, all of these have kind of a little helper thing where you can, you know, it can tell you what you want to do. So left melt drag raises height, shift flattens it, uses the same height, control will go down one level, starting from where you click. So you see that. Now, just like going up, you can go pretty far down, but also like going up, you know, that's going to be really hard to see. Oops, that's not what I wanted. But yeah, you can go far down and do things that way. Shift click to paint over that, you know, quarry, and we'll put this back a little bit. Let's see. X click adds height. It's pretty similar to just regular clicks. I don't know why it exists necessarily, but the other stuff is, like, you can just, without hitting your mouse, you can tap G, tap B to raise or lower without doing a mouse click at all. Again, it's for, I guess, more precision stuff. And N switches the tile set. Usually, you want to be careful about when we're using tile sets, because, as you can see, tile sets don't automatically transition. So if you just paint here, or if you C and left click, it'll change the tile set as well. this doesn't look good. So you'd have to cover up that transition in some way. Like with most tools, if you hit Control Z, it'll go back. Control Y goes redoes stuff. Anyway, all right, let's make this path back through here. Oops, I did that wrong. Let's go back to Radiant and C-click to put that back there. So now we got this. Let's move on to the water tool. Let's make a little river that cuts through here. So I hit E to go to the water tool. And as you can see, it's got different but similar paintings. So you can't raise the height or anything like that. You can just paint water and erase water. You notice that the terrain doesn't come back when I do that. So I have to switch tools if I wanted it to, if I messed up here. And so just like with most drawing stuff, you want to draw in short brush strokes so that you can Control Z when you make a mistake. And there we go. Now we got a nice straight river that's running through it. We'll remove it. Same goes with middle mouse, so I can, make big stuff. And that's the one thing. You can't change the height of the river itself, but you can paint on higher terrain. And you can see that this water is actually higher up than this one. However, there's no way to connect them. If I do this, it just bleeds through the whole thing. The only way to connect them is to collapse the tiles and manually do it yourself, do like waterfall additions and stuff like that. It's not easy. Generally, you want to keep your water one height unless you're damn sure you know what you're doing. It's just easier to work with that way. So, alright, so we got water running through it. There's really not much else to it there. It tells you can raise and lower the height with G and B, but it just doesn't work, so just ignore that. That's pretty much the water tool. Really can't do all that much extra with it. Next one is this one, the Paint Path tool. Hit R to get to that. And this is a way to kind of connect things. So if you paint through it, you can see that it will draw roads on the flat surface, and it will draw and it will make staircases to connect across the river or across hills with when you paint across it like that. You can see that it draws the path itself. You can remove individual pieces if you want. You can even make a cut right through the middle there. So now I have two separate staircases instead of one. If that's what you want, I did that by control clicking. Left click draws the path, control click erases it. Similar before, you can always look here. And again, no real other options available. Control Q, which is going to turn on the grid nav. This is really useful for looking at your path stuff. So you can see where before, if we look just down here, all this is blocked. So there's all this red, you can't cross at all. Now when we look here, there's red in the middle because I cut the path there, but of course you can make it down these stairs. It's green, it's pathable. And you didn't have to do anything for that. It's all built into the tile stuff. Like most tiles, stairs and other things come in with kind of random faces. So you can see like these are the big stairs, these are sort of, I don't know, broken stairs, and they get random props as well. So we got a couple of torches here, nothing over here, and then this kind of angled prop there. There is ways to easily fix that without collapsing the tiles. I'll show that when we get to the tool, but for now we're just going to move on. I guess one other thing is that if I go back to terrain, I have the path here, and so when I paint here, it continues to hold that path. So I can, paint down, and it will just fix the path in order to keep it being pathable that whole way. So yeah, if you do want to go back, I almost forgot one thing. This is new with Reborn. So over here on path type, I don't think there's a keybind for this. You can change from path to destruction, and they basically are completely different tools. They don't sync up at all. They work entirely by themselves. But path destruction lets you make holes, cliffs, whatever you want. So you can see here, it makes this is all unpathable, and it makes for these, nice cliffs. You can do, if you do it, real thin, you can get cracks, but if you paint the whole area, it'll make a nice big cliff. You can't, it's like water, you can't paint down paths up and down terrain. It has to be all on one surface. And it always becomes unpathable. You can, make your cliffs on the edges here, and they'll look a lot nicer than just cutting off the edge of the map. But yeah, it's very nice for a lot of things. You don't need to overuse it, but it can do well to accent certain things. You do always have to change back from path to and destruction. One thing, you can use the mouse wheel up and down in order to change these things quickly without needing to click and drag if there's no keybinds. That's something that's useful specifically for material set paint blending, which we'll do in just a second. But next we're going to go on to the tree tool. Tree tool is T, and this one you know, just like before, you left click and it paints trees. You control click and it erases them. There's more commands in this one, so there's like erase trees, incremental, and stuff like that. I honestly don't know what the difference is between this. It's weird. It's like it caps at the number of trees. Don't ask me. Just try them out yourself. Generally, you left click to paint trees. You control click to remove them. When you have some trees, if you hold G and click on those trees, it will raise the height of them so you can get bigger ones. If you hold B and click on them, it will lower them. There are different types of big, so I can keep doing this up and down. You can see that the trees will actually change type sometimes. It can be an easy way, like if you really want the white trees to show up, you can, you know, do this until you get them. It's not great, but it can be done. You can also click, you can C-click to change tree type, but that doesn't seem to do anything. It might in other styles or something like that, but I don't know. If you do X and drag, you can see it's changing their pitch a bit. So if you just want to randomize it a bit more, X and drag will do that. Control X and drag will set them back to normal, straight up and down. But yeah, X and drag do that. And then there is, if you hold shift and middle mouse at the same time, you can rotate the trees however you want. I mean, if you, this is for very specific, you know, stuff. I don't know. If you have real need for this, you absolutely can do it. I don't know what you would need that for necessarily. So again, Control Q is going to show you what's blocked by this, and so you can use this to see if there are any juke spots that came together. Right here, this is not pathable, so despite there being green, it's not good enough. But if we say we remove that tree right there, now there's this green path right here. So in-game, people can walk right through there. So if you don't want that, you can add more trees. You can, you know, drop those trees until you get a better variation that covers enough for you. A lot of stuff is good like that. One other thing, tree type. So different tile sets have different types of trees, and you can paint with them. What I was just painting is deciduous summer. This is bamboo. They have different, you know, heights, so like really tall bamboo trees all kind of look the same and have very, you know, like redwood style feel to them, but they also have a short version. You know, that's what C does. Yeah, if you C click, it'll change existing trees to your new type once you select it. So deciduous autumn, this has, you know, colored trees and dead trees, or trees that have, you know, look dead. Spring is going to be nice and, you know, dogwood, cherry blossom, that sort of coloration. Pine summer is pine trees, and potentially big ones or small ones, whatever you want. You can also set it random and get a complete smattering of all those trees in there. I like to go with more of a particular motif, but it's up to you what you want to do with your trees. And just like before, yeah, if you switch to, let's switch to snow real quick. See, this has fewer tree types. We got bamboo winter, deciduous winter, and pine winter. So they're similar to the radiant ones, but they don't have all the types in them. And if we did something like desert, there's only deciduous summer, which is what they call these, you know, pine trees. Or not pine trees, palm trees. All right, so this is a plant tool, which is Y, the Y key. This one does not have, or does have a plant type, but it's always moderate, sparse, or thick. And that just determines kind of how much. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing about the tree tool, which is here as well. So on these other tools, they have a density, but it's always fixed. You can't change it. On the tree tool, the density is not fixed. So you can adjust it. So 100 density means it's going to paint them really thickly. And if you set it way down, like 11, now it's very sparse. So depending on what you need, you can, you know, set that accordingly. And these you can, you know, set by keyboard if you want, or however. Same for these plants. You can set the type and paint them according to what density you want. I'm still on desert here, so we're gonna go back to radiant. And really, plants, you know, they're not very exciting to me. They don't block anything, so I paint these here. It's still very pathable. It's just for accenting stuff most of the time. You can get different stuff like these. The thick ones give these logs, but again, they don't block anything by themselves. And there is still a random selection to get a, you know, a smattering of all that crap. Standard stuff, left click paints, control click erases, change your brush size, and that's about it. Moving on from plants because they suck and they're boring. Actually, we'll skip paint blending for now. We're going to go to prop tools, which is, I believe, a U. Yes, place objects. So oddly, you can use this also to place trees and plants and place them individually if you're so inclined. You can use this object placement to select them, plants, props, or trees, and then they even give you a different type and stuff like that. So if you have a specific, I want to plant just these spring trees, then you can do that. But for placing objects, it's not about painting. It's about, yes, selecting individual points on this white grid and putting stuff there. When I place a tree, you can see it grays out the ones around it because I can't place anything there. It disallows that. So if we go to props, there's a lot of prop types, at least for most tile sets. Ambient creatures, turtles, squirrels and stuff like that. Banners. Since this is radiant basic, it's going to be a radiant banner. Base is static, just, these individual things. Grass clumps, there's tons of stuff here. I'm not going to go through all of them, except for, I guess, some of the more interesting ones. Overlays here gives you, ward spots kind of things. And path overlays is very nice for, letting you add interesting crap to your paths, so that you can make them pop a bit more and things like that. Alright, so anyway, when we're placing stuff, there are certain keys you want to know. Left click places, of course. You can place multiple things in different areas. Once it's placed, you can see on the grid there's this blue. If you click on the blue, you can click and drag, and it'll move it around. If you shift click and drag, it'll clone it. That's a pretty useful thing, is that shift clicking in Hammer tends to clone. You can rotate with X and click in order to get things in a different orientation. And if you tap F or V, it will switch between, all the variations that are here. So if there's, a specific, there's a U-shaped path overlay in here somewhere. Yeah, this one. Then I can get that. I can drag it over here. I can X rotate it, and I can move it in there. And, it's not perfect, but it's close enough for now. For placing stuff. These same controls work on all of the props and stuff like that you can find in here. You can also set it to random if you just kind of want to just throw random stuff everywhere. Not always the right way to do it, or the best way to do things, but it does work. Next, we're going to go on to the selection box. This lets you select individual tiles on your map. Left click and drag will select them individually. Shift click will add. Control click removes. And there's also lasso select. Hold middle mouse. You can drag around all of that. If you hold X and middle mouse, it gives you a box, and you can select all of them this way. What's the point of selecting them, you may say? So, realistically, selecting them lets you do things like change tile sets. You can swap them with this previous and next tile set. One thing you can see there is actually that when I switch tile sets, the paths also switch, which is useful. You can do you can Control C and Control Shift V, and it will let you paste them somewhere else. It doesn't let you rotate them, but you can paste them if you've made a kind of like a small hill or something like that. And you just want to put it somewhere. You're completely allowed to do that. And so it took the overlays, it took the path, everything else like that. If for some reason this was, not stupid, then it could be a really good thing to be able to paste them easily like that. There is raise and lower here, same as the other tools, G and B, but you can, specifically carve out the pieces you want to raise and lower. Although you can see sometimes it leaves, when it has to lower things around it, you can end up with some odd looking stuff. So we're going to just Control Z out of that. One other thing is collapse. And what this does is it takes it out of tile form and puts it into mesh form. And I'm not going to talk about meshes here. This is always going way too long. I'm just going to cut this at the tile stuff, and then sort of, we'll jump into more tools after that, but I can make a cut of this for YouTube or something like that. But by putting this as collapsing it, it's now completely editable in normal standard hammer stuff. We'll talk about that later. The final tool here, the final tool in position is enable disable. You can see that these tiles, when I collapse them, were disabled. So if I control click I can re-enable them in order to do that with that. This is also useful for world layers. We're not going to talk about them. You can disable and enable things across different world layers in order for them to potentially show up when you shift them. Again, same deal. Middle mouse lets you do that. X and middle mouse, box, not much else. Alright, last tool we're going to talk about is the Paint Blends tool. This is actually really useful and something you can spend a shitload of time on in order to make a map that looks good. It also has a lot of options, and yeah, but it's very useful. So one of the things first to know is that when you're on this tool, there is no tile selection. I don't know why. It's on every other one of them. You can select the current tile set. If you need to change tile sets when you're on this tool, you have to swap tools and then change it. Not like that, but just change it. God damn it. Change it like that, and then we're going to go back and paint again. Okay, so in this tool, what you do with it is you can paint on the surface of the tiles in order to accent things. And what you have is that there's a multi-blend texture that all of these have on them that has different layers on it, and those layers can be painted. And each of these tile sets has a bunch of different material sets that can be placed on these, and each material set has 4 layers that can be blended, and some of them also have a transition layer that allows you to cut between 2 different tile sets, or at least 2 different material sets, in order to make things blend easily. So right now all of this stuff is on the original material set. So 4 is going to be moss, 3 is going to be the default green, and you can see we can actually erase the path coloration itself, because that's just, we can't erase the stairs. You need the path tool for that, but we can erase this this path because layer 1 is actually that path, and so we can make our own, you know, path with drawing layer 1 here. Layer 2 actually adds stone, so you can make a stone path instead. And so all of this is being drawn right now with, you know, standard, you can change the radius here, but there's pressure, opacity, and hardness that determine how things are going to get painted. So we just painted this with 100% opacity, so it was a lot on this. If we wanted to add, like, just some stones, we could turn the opacity way down and click and drag around. You know, I'm just kind of just sort of making a little brush strokes here. And now we've got, you know, stones within that. If we wanted to add some moss to the edges, we can, you know, drag and paint like this, and now it's like that. You know, get more like this, and make your own, you know, I don't know, mossy path or something like that. Put some in the middle there. Whatever you want to do. Hardness has to do with where you click. It's easier to show with opacity up. When you click, it's painting the entire circle. If I turn it down, it's going to paint just near the center. But if you click a few times, it'll, you know, go out. Again, these are just the ways to use the tool. Pressure is, yeah, just how heavy it's going to paint in a single stroke. Usually I tend to just play with the opacity and hardness in order to, you know, add stuff. 100% is going to really paint hard. You don't paint over overlays. They overlay everything, as the name would suggest, so it's always going to be there unless I go and remove it. Everything. There's the smooth tool, which will, you know, attempt to kind of, you know, fix things. So it's seeing all this layer 3 around this layer 4, and it's, you know, softening it up a bit. Same goes in here. I can, you know, get this. It's a subtle tool, but it can make some difference in, you know, cleaning things up, or it can also just make everything really muddy. There's erase all, which, yeah, just dumps it right back to how it originally was, including the paths back. And there's other ones. Material and layer don't come into play here. There's also color. Color lets you paint, you know, a color on it. Sometimes you can use this to accent it, like black is going to be way too dark, but if we take this, like a lighter brown, we turn down the opacity, and then we paint it over like here, we can make a kind of wetter looking dirt road or something like that. So maybe if we, you know, added a rain effect or something here, this would look better than just leaving it the same. You got to be careful with the color tool, because it can really, you know, get you. Alright, before we go into like transitions and other material sets, there's also a couple other things here. We can turn off show path, just in case, it's not a big deal. There's paint on flat. So you can see when I'm painting here, I'm painting with it's paint with layer 2, which is the stone one. It's not painting, right? It's not painting on these. If I change paint on flat, I can do this and paint on the walls like this. And this is potentially useful for, you know, yeah, making more rocky formations and stuff like that. Or if I wanted to, I could paint with 3 and get the green terrain going down into the river here, or however you want to do it. Oh shoot, jeez. All right, one other thing I forgot about the selection tool that I was going to show. If you select one of these, it'll show you in these gray squares the individual prop points, I guess you could say, that are involved. And so if I select this and I hit F, you can see that it changed the base type of this staircase. So there's like for this one, there's thicker and thinner. So I can do, you know, maybe I'll do all thin there and all thick ones here. But also you can mouse over the individual gray square and hit F and V in order to change stuff. So if I want this to be all torches, I can do this and set them up that way, and maybe I just want to get rid of this torch entirely, and it's gone. Let's dump this as, or wait, we can add this, and now we've got fairly decent symmetry. It's not perfect because I, you know, use different styles here and like that. Maybe it's a bit better, but either way, this lets you adjust this stuff without having to go elsewhere. You can do that also with these, with the cliff walls. You can change them like that, and also change the individual, you know, props here a bit. It's not a lot. You can't change everything. Like if you really want to get rid of all these bushes, I don't think there's a good way to do it that I know of, but it can work. All right, forgot about that. Anyway, back to the paint blending. So we did color, we did all this. Okay, let's talk about material sets. So right now everything's on original materials. If I choose Radiant Dry and I hit C and click, it's going to change everything on my brush to the new material set. So this is Radiant Dry, and now Radiant Dry has its own layers. So layer 4 is a drier moss, then layer 3 is going to be the dry grass. Layer 2 is going to be, I need to turn up the opacity a bit to show this better. Layer 2 is going to be stone again, and layer 1 is going to be path again. And basically the same path as before, but not quite. So now let's see, we paint this stone across, and you can see the transition points are much harder to tell across this than across the green, the grass area. What we can do is we can go up to here. There's Radiant Dry to Default is the name of the material set. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint these. I hit C and I click them. You can't really see anything happen immediately, but what I've done is I've changed the material set. And now, in this material set, I can paint on it again with 1 and 3. 1 and 2 are going to be the same, 3 and 4 are going to be the same, but only 1 and 3 work. So, painting on these with 3 is going to give it the general dry, but what's the magic here is changing it to material transition tool. And now when I paint on it, because it's a transition material, it's going to transition the layer 3 from what it is on this tool to the default one. And so you can see that it's transition between these two. If I change it to 1, well, there's no transition because they were the same beforehand. But this has made a more clean transition. Obviously not right there. If I Control C that, then I can maybe do it again, but I actually can't because of the stone. That's right, because there's no transition on the stone. So I have to be a little bit careful about that. If I go to Erase All and paint it here, I can pull it back out and then transition it a bit more so that it's not as hard cut by the edge. It's hard to see anyway, it's not a big deal, but you can see that it makes a big difference being able to transition between materials. Radiant also has a Radiant to Dire transition, which, you know, lets you get in between dire tile sets and stuff like that. But it also, you can see here with layer 1, there's a transition between road types, between the dirt path of Radiant and the dirt but dark dirt path of Dire. And that transition, you know, just lets you do things more evenly. You can clear things out again, Control C. You can change the angles. Okay, so there's also, we're going to paint this Control C Radiant Base, and let's do this. So Radiant Base is a bit different, you can see, than surrounding, because the layer 2 brick it has like moss indented inside of it. But there's also Radiant Base angled. If I use C and click this, you can see it's changed the angle of the stone to be something else. So if we were drawing paths and we wanted to, let's go this way and this way. If we're drawing paths like this, maybe we like it like this, but we could also paint paint it like this. So we have an angle one way here. I drew this just to cut it, and then an angle this way, because if we do this, then you're gonna see that there's kind of weirdest transition. But it does let you, change things like that, but you have to do it from the material sets themselves. That's actually pretty much it on the tile editor. Like, it's very powerful. You can do all sorts of stuff with it, just by changing tile sets and messing with them. The main thing is you got to learn the material sets, you got to learn the transitions in order to get those right, and a lot of them just don't exist. Like, if I do, if I change, again, you have to switch tools. If I change over to desert and go hit Q, change this tool. Now, if I need to transition this, it's hard. If I go to material sets under this, there's only original materials and base angle. That's not helpful. If I go back to radiant basic, there's only dry. There's no desert. There's no easy way to transition this stuff. So you have to get creative. One thing you can do is use the path tool and destroy, so that, now I have desert here and radiant there. Another thing you can do is water. Water tends to look similar in general, but what you have to do is you have to paint the water on each side kind of the same, so that you get the cliffs right. And you can see inside the water you still have this transition, but it's easier to cover up once it's down there generally. I mean, compared to being up top. It's not ideal, but it certainly looks better. But yeah, transitions are one of the harder things to do well, from my experience. And it's why when I made my last map, I stuck to the transitions initially and made sure I could get them all right. And yeah, it was a bit tricky. So actually, let me just show you that map. I gotta actually drop out of this whole thing, just to show you what basically can be done with the tile set editor almost entirely. I did a little bit of work on it in other ways, but it's mostly tile stuff. So this is my game mode in progress, very, very, very much in progress. Not a lot to show for it, but the map is in a good state. Calling it Mark of the Hunter, don't ask for details, I don't know, it's hard as fuck to explain, it changes every day. So anyway, this is the map, and it's mostly tile set stuff. So I've got, individual biomes here. You can see that this is the desert area, and because there's no transition, what I did is I created this stone path that allows me to, transition between them in a relatively easy way. All of these paths I added path overlays to, so that they pop a bit more instead of just being dirt roads. Here, instead of using a dire tile set, I actually just use the dire to radiant transition material in order to transition between, this castle with my boss or whatever, and stuff like that. Things like this lava and the ocean over here, those are just regular hammer mesh stuff, which I'll talk about in my, next tutorial, I guess, if I'm gonna break this up or something. But otherwise, this is all it. Just trees, paths, terrain, water, and everything else. You can make something like this, or probably a lot better, because I really don't have a lot of artistic talent. This is mostly just, figuring out the tools and making them work for me. So hopefully you can do the same, and I will probably cut this here. So thanks for watching.